It's like, when you buy a CD and you get all that shit in the back.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, so I record right away. Well, it's good to see you, man, and thanks for taking the time. I know you're super busy. I'm glad I caught you when you're in the city and not in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll go for about, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes, like whatever, whatever the flow feels like. What I'm really excited about is that I'm not just someone who is interviewing you because I've heard about you or the stuff that you do, but I actually have experienced your products,
Yeah.
and so it's really cool to have done that. So I'm going on my third wilderness collective trip to Alaska in a few weeks, and it's interesting because I feel like there's a progression. I know they're random, but it feels like I went to the Yosemite one. It's kind of the intro,
Yeah.
and it was amazing. And I feel like and then we did the Lululemon thing. And I think the Alaska one is kind of like it's a different vibe. No, it's almost like a I don't know if I would say a graduation. It kind of feels more adult.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, it's a different type of trip. I'm totally curious to like hear your feedback from it. And it's a different type of experience too.
Yeah,
I think it's like, especially with Alaska being like a bucket list destination for so many people, it's like
yeah.
what a great way to tick off that bucket list, of 1,000 miles in Alaska on a motorcycle is a pretty good way to do it.
Yeah. I want to start with your grandfather because the
Yeah.
last trip I went on, you hear little bits and pieces of conversations, and I heard you, and maybe it was by the fire. You were talking about your grandfather's impact on your ripple and everything that you're passionate about when it comes to adventure. So let's start there.
Yeah, sure. So my grandfather, like your mug, by the way.
My mug says "Wilderness makes you better," which is the motto for the company.
Yeah, so my grandfather, who he actually passed 2 summers ago now, about this time.
Mm,
And was just a formative figure, not just in my life, but I think I'm like my family's legacy in a sense, And what I mean is he immigrated from the Netherlands to Canada. So he just had that mindset of anything is possible. And then he was famous for saying, like never let money get in the way, right? So he would just always
mm.
like find a way to figure something out. And kind of the classic story with him is he had 6 kids, dad being one of them, one of the oldest, pulled all the kids out of school and spent a whole summer and a bit of the fall building a trimaran sailboat. And like just, from literally like, old salvage stuff they found at the
Wow.
dump and just like airplane fuselages with the pontoons. They built this huge trimaran, drove it across Canada with 2 different station wagons, assembled it in the St. Lawrence Canal, and then sailed it for 6 months all the way down to Florida and back up again.
Wait,
And then
wait a
they
minute.
drove
You know, there,
across
there,
Canada.
there was no Google, there was no YouTube. How did they build? They just said we're going to build a boat, or did he already have knowledge? And I mean, obviously,
Yeah, I mean, he basically just got books from the library, like
wow,
honestly, like he's just kind of like a relentless like DIY guy. I mean, he built an entire pipe organ, in his later years, just thought it'd be cool to do, and so he like found all these books and built it together. So he's kind of this like relentless tinkerer. But anyways, that big boat trip, there were several more after that. He built 4 different boats. They even bought, before the boat trip, they bought a Greyhound bus, my grandpa, and like converted the whole thing into like the modern like camper van before that was
right?
a thing, and drove around the United States for 9 months with my dad's family. So I grew up, and then they probably, my grandparents had probably traveled to 50 or 60 different countries too. We were always picking them up from the
Wow,
airport as a little kid, and then they come back and they do like the slideshow and like ka-chink,
yeah.
ka-chink, all the places in the world that they traveled. So I kind of just grew up thinking that was normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, you can't afford a boat, just build one.
Wow.
Very literally. And to just be explorers of the world that we find ourselves in, and my grandfather was really just kind of like a big source of inspiration for that, for my dad, for like our whole family. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of cool, like if you think about like what's the, like what are the legends and what's the legacy of the family that you grow up in, that's one that I'm very grateful for, and it certainly shaped a lot of what I do now.
Dude, that's such a priceless mindset. I mean,
Yeah,
to say, don't let money get in the way, because I would say the majority of us, we allow money to get in the way, right, of what we're trying to build. And
absolutely.
let's just go build a boat, and also put our family on it and go on it for 6 months. That's one of the ultimate build the bus while you're driving it stories I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but for you as a kid growing up, there's no way that didn't sink into your subconscious, right? And it kind of laid tracks for all the stuff that you're doing now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I saw it like play out in different ways, even in like my own family, right? Like my
Mhm.
dad and my uncle, they bought 40 acres of land that I grew up on outside of the city in
Right.
Canada. And they're like, all right, we're going to build our own houses. And it was like full on like pioneer style, pretty much. Like my dad, like this is before I was born, like they built the basement. They lived in the
Mm,
basement as the family, more and more kids, because I'm one of 5 kids. Then they built the next level of the house while they were living in the basement. Then
wow.
they lived in both levels while they built the third level. And now it's like this cool little like A-frame cabin in the woods idea. But like very much, we're building the plane as we fly it is pretty much the family philosophy, whether that's spoken or not. I come from a long line of entrepreneurs. I think
Mhm.
actually all the way back, like as far as you can go, that's just always been our story. Is like, all right, figure it out, be resourceful,
Yeah.
find a way to do it, humble roots, all that kind of thing.
I love it, man. I love when people build things from nothing, and it's the passion that makes that thing, makes the kite fly in the sky. So you started. What's interesting about you? So you've always been an entrepreneur. You come from a family of entrepreneurs. Also, the blood running through your veins is adventure. You started in the clothing business, correct?
Yeah, that's what brought me from Canada to Los Angeles. My former business partner and current best friend Steve and I started a high end denim brand in
Mm-hmm.
Canada, and really had no clue what we were doing, but quickly realized that Los Angeles was the mecca for
Right.
the jeans and t-shirt mecca. And so, long story, ended up finding ourselves down here, teamed up with an investor. At 22 years old, telling my
Oh wow.
parents that we're moving to a different country. So, and I haven't left since then. So that was about, I guess, like 17 years ago, something like that. So yeah, I did a handful of clothing startups, about 3 or 4 different kind of startups in that space, and then started to transition out of that. Help my wife start a media company for women, and that's really around the time when I was also kind of the wheels were turning for Wilderness. Because I wasn't too eager to jump back into the apparel industry.
So was Wilderness Collective something that you had as a vision, or did it kind of form? Was it peripheral? Did it happen on the side, and you're like, "Oh, wait a minute, there's something happening here organically"?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I was doing it without realizing I was doing
Mm,
it for quite a few years, because I
yeah,
was just the ringleader for all my friends. I was like, hey, I bought a $500 catamaran on Craigslist. Let's see if we can sail it to the Channel Islands. Like, what
right.
could go wrong? Like I was always like the organizer and kind of the guy who's like, all right, let's do it. Let's get out of the city. I mean, I think that's one of the keys to living in any kind of city or modern life, right? Is
Hmm.
developing this rhythm of adventure, we call it at Wilderness. And I was naturally doing that for my friends and enabling them in a sense by putting the details together, making it easier for them to say yes. So when I then transitioned out of the apparel space, I was like thinking, okay, I've spent, 8 years learning, getting good at building consumer brands, telling a story with compelling marketing.
Hmm.
And my interest in adventure trips and adventure travel was growing. And I found that by far the quality of time that I had with my friends when I was doing this stuff just superseded, the quality of time that you get when you're grabbing a beer with your buddy,
Hmm.
every other
Right.
week, like that, right? So the relational momentum that we gained in a weekend was huge. And it really helped offset how busy all of our lives are. Everyone's all entrepreneurs doing all this stuff. So I was trying to wrap all that together. And also, I think I found that like uniquely doing this stuff, was especially healthy for me and my guy friends, like with our
Yeah.
male relationships. So that
Sure.
was really like an emphasis, it's that kind of idea of like, hey, if it's good for you, it might be good for other people. So I was like, hey, I love adventuring. I really value, the male relationships in my life, want to cultivate those in a meaningful way. And maybe I can wrap this kind of branding and marketing and
Hmm.
high customer service, high hospitality, halo around this thing and, kind of shake off the dust of the old adventure travel industry and see if we can do something a little bit new. So,
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that, you put 12 dudes on two wheels and, throw them into the wild and have a truck following them and you go camping and stuff? Why do you think that produces so much glue, like relationship glue and bonding, and
sure.
as opposed to, like you said, having a beer with someone at a bar?
Yeah. Well, so I don't think that you have to do like what we do for our trips. I don't think that's the only way, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's not that like, okay, if you want to get close to your friends, you got to drop a couple $1,000s and come on a
Hmm.
wilderness trip, right? So I'm more than happy to just know that guys are and people are connecting meaningfully. But I think the things that we tap into on purpose are it's the power of shared experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you share an experience with each other, it's so much more powerful than telling each other about an experience, right? So you're
Right.
living it. We work really hard to create a distraction-free environment. As you know, we've been taking people's phones away since
Yep. Yep.
day one, and man, it's never been more important than now.
Yeah. Of
So
course.
that's another big one, right? It's like you're removing the escape of like, okay, the conversation is stalled, or I'm uncomfortable, or I'm feeling like on the outside, so I'm going to retreat to my little world right here. So
Hmm.
instead, you have guys they've got to push in. You're like, all right, so we finished talking about work, now what are we going to talk about, and that's when you start to get to those deeper levels. And then it's, shared challenge, shared achievement. I love it. My favorite trips are when things go wrong, right? Not when everything
Right.
goes right. So it's even if it's small little things you've got to work through as a team, all that stuff is happening. It's these like little like micro connections that over a 4-day period, you walk away being like, man, like it was just us for 4 days. We were doing the same thing, but having our own unique micro experience while doing the same ride. There were no distractions. We brought together some of the best things in life, which is nature, great food,
Hmm.
great conversation, camping out, motorcycles, or whatever it is. And it's kind of this like mixture of things that I think it builds comfortability, leads to vulnerability often,
Yeah.
and people just feel freer. They feel like a better version of themselves. And so we really try hard to create that environment.
You know what else happens? I think is um, the men get to leave their resume, scoreboard, corner offices. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
you've had, CEOs, you've had celebrities, you've had all different type.
Oh,
And so, but when you're on a dirt bike, you're inside a helmet, and no one cares what you do or how much money you have, or if you're famous. You're just
yeah.
one of us, and so it's almost like everyone kind of like meets at ground level, and,
Oh,
and there's a
love it.
humanization piece to it.
Yeah, no, that's a great insight. I mean, it's a great equalizer.
Yeah.
You know, um, we really, yeah, like you said, we've had super accomplished, successful folks, and they're,
Hmm.
eat crap in the mud puddle, and some guy who
Right.
saved up 3 years helps him pick up his bike. Like, it's really not about like the money or what you do for work, and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, and I love that you like that things go wrong, right? One of the quotes that I have here is that you like when you don't know the outcome, and I think what happens is it positions us for a hero's journey. I use that with clients a lot. This whole idea of going from the unknown, the known to the unknown, slaying dragons, overcoming fears,
yeah,
and I think that whole thing, returning to the village, change. And I think by the time that week is up, and now we're grabbing our phones again, there has been some kind of revelation or internal like shift. Like every person that is on that bike or the other vehicles that you have, they have gone through some kind of journey. It wasn't just a activity for them.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, let me ask you this: you're also a father, right? How many kids do you have now?
Two,
Two
two,
kids. Are you
two.
done, or you want more?
Oh man, I don't know. For right now, we are done, but we're not officially done. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I have a 15-month-old, so I'm in that world now too
Awesome.
as an older dad. How do you juggle this business? And you're flying back. You're doing all these things. You also have teams, but then you also a father and a husband. How do you juggle all that?
Yeah. Um, I think that, as like a lifelong entrepreneur, right? Like for me, it's the whole separating like your personal life and your work life. Like you know, it's a hard thing to do. And frankly, it's not even actually what I want to do. I think like throughout my day, I'm switching from personal to work to personal to work,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think of it as like, you know, these big shifts, but part of what, like my wife and I 2 summers ago, we were in Europe for 9 weeks. We did a home swap
Wow.
there. My business was running. We were there with our family. I was doing as much email and stuff as I needed to be, but I was also just having a great experience with my family. And so it wasn't all vacation and it wasn't all work. So
Mm-hmm.
I try to keep things pretty flexible and fluid, but then balance is always the thing that I'm shooting for. I mean, I'm a 9 to 5 guy. Like I really try hard to not work at night, and I
Mm-hmm.
pretty much never do, don't really bring work home. But if I have to, if there's a big thing happening, like that's okay. Right. But what I don't want to settle into is a rhythm where, work is always taking over. My grandfather actually, he had a great line, where he said, you know, I want to own my business. I don't want my business to own me.
Oh, I love
And
that.
that's
Yeah.
absolutely true, and I'm very fortunate to own my own business and have schedule freedom and flexibility. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who are actually like more of a slave to their job than they would be if they just had a normal job out there.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
seasons too, so for me it's trying to find that balance. As the business has grown, I've gone on fewer and fewer trips,
Right.
so I'm really trying to like work hard to not make it where it has to be me all the time for every decision, for everything that happens with the business. And my wife being an entrepreneur as well, I think we're both very mutually supportive in that. There'll be
Yeah.
nights she's like I've just got to work, and I'm like, that's great. I'll watch the kids. And there's sometimes where I need to call that on too. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because I wanted to throw some questions at you that you probably don't get asked a lot, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously business, adventure, everything you're doing, but also I'm really interested in you as dad and husband as well. So
Yeah.
how do you? Because relationships are hard. I've been married. I'm in a relationship now. Um, how do you build a healthy relationship with being this busy and pursuing passions and all that?
Right.
Do you
Um,
guys do you guys do date night and stuff like that,
we
or
do.
are you
We
guys so
do
exhausted?
actually. Yeah, no, we do. We're pretty good on a weekly date night, and that
Hmm.
really helps, because yeah, we got 2 young kids. My
Yeah.
1-year-old boy is almost 5. The other little guy is just turned 1, so it's full on.
Wow.
Um, I think one thing is like, especially as a guy, like I've got to work to share all of my life, and especially like my mental work life with my wife, right? So what I mean is it's easy to come home from work, I'll drive home, decompress on the drive home kind of thing.
Hmm.
And to come home and you get a baby thrown in your arms, and Sarah, my wife, will be like, "Hey, how was your day?" I'll be like, "Oh, it was pretty good. It was like busy, I did this and that." And I can't even tell her what I did that day, and not actually be giving her my whole self in that
Mm,
moment. Because
right.
the truth is, it's like, hey, actually, like, I'm dealing with this thing with one of my guys on my team, and like, he's not feeling whatever valued, or like he's trying to figure things out, and I'm feeling nervous about the conversation that I need to have with him, or like a customer like sent me this email, and I know it's not a big deal, but it's kind of got me feeling like that people pleasing side of me is like kicking in. So it's like, or you can just say, "Oh, it was a great day. It was busy. Yeah, I had a call with these guys and I had a couple sales calls." Right. So it's like how much, like the more information that I can give, that's a gift to our marriage.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
But the lazy side of me can be like, "Oh, I dealt with that already today. Like, I
Right.
don't want to go back into it."
Right.
So I think that for me, because a big part of my life is my work, then a big part of my relationship needs to include my work, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise I'm keeping my wife out of a big part of my life, right? So I really try to tune in with her on what's the emotional stuff that's happening at work with me versus like, you know, I'm not like talking about like the finances of the business with her around the dinner table
Right.
unless we're totally screwed and it's stressing me out, you know, because I think what a mistake that a lot of men can make is we compartmentalize our lives. And like we, you know, work wise, we get home and we're like, you know, it's actually like I'm really struggling at work, but we're kind of like putting on a brave face.
Mm-hmm.
And then your spouse or your partner is like, why are you acting different? Like, what's going on? You're like, I'm fine. We're fine.
Right.
And you may be fine with each other, but there's like this big part of your life, this meaningful part of your life where there's chaos, there's tension, there's, you know, emotions and all this stuff. So that has been one thing that has certainly helped, you know?
Yeah, and I want to pause there for a second because you're saying something so important. I mean, you're at the end of the day, you're talking about being vulnerable. You're talking about less logic and what happens in the day to day, but connecting with your wife by doing life with her instead of around her. So it's sharing how you feel about stuff, not so much this happened, that happened, and yeah, that produces connection, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That's a great tip. Um, Speaking of men and vulnerability and all that, you know, whether you know it or not, you actually work in the men's space. You do
Oh,
men's work, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and I know all your trips aren't just for men, but um, you've turned adventure into a movement, and also you're leading not only your team, your employees, but also you're leading a lot of men,
Yeah.
you know, on this journey. And so, what is that like? Is that something that you don't want to carry that torch because there's a lot of pressure? What is that like? And also, what is your definition of a man today?
Sure. So I think that there is, you know, there's some pressure, but I try to not, you know, I think that a lot of pressure comes with that if you're trying to have all the answers.
Hmm.
And we are not really a brand that is trying to have all the answers for humans or for men or whatever. Rather, I've always said, like, we want to be a part of the conversation, right? So we want to have the courage to spark the conversation. One of my mentors said, every guy wants to have the conversation, he doesn't want to start it, right? So on our trips, I think of our trips, our brand's job, my lead guide's job is to push the conversation a little bit further, to
Mm,
elevate the conversation, right? It's like, yeah, we can, you know, shoot the breeze all day long around the campfire, talk about work and that kind of thing. Or you can ask one or two simple questions, and all of a sudden the conversation drops to a whole other level that's actually life-giving, that's actually like soul fulfilling, right? So that is a big part of the brand for me. You know, this idea of wilderness makes you better, right? Like it implies that there is a better for
hmm.
all of us. And
Right.
it's not a destinate, like you don't get to better. Better is always going to be ahead of you, which is that idea of like always learning and always, you know, improving yourself. So in terms of the men's conversation, like, yeah, I guess I feel some pressure with it, but I don't really get bogged down by the pressure. I think it's more of an opportunity, right? Like our job is to like set the table, set
Yeah.
the context, and let the magic happen, not be super prescriptive with it.
Right.
Like we don't have like a program or a hard agenda on our trips where it's like, all right, here's like the 10 steps to becoming like the better version of yourself. Like we could do that, but I think there's a lot of that out there. One of my primary goals with our clients is to get them looking and thinking inward, right? So it's
Mm,
introspection. So many people, you know, they come on the trip and they think that they're there for the dirt bikes. They think they're there for the side by sides. And my goal is that by the end of the trip, they realize why they're really there.
right.
They realize what at a sub level made them feel like I need to do something like this. I need to do something big in my life. I need to have a big experience, or I need a change in my life, and then that's like everyone comes for a reason, right? They
Right.
might
Right.
not realize what it is. So by the end of the trip, a lot of people are like, oh man, yeah, like actually, you know, I'm in a huge transition at work, or like my marriage is falling apart, or I
Yeah.
just started a new relationship, or like I'm trying to like reconnect with my kids and having a
Hmm.
hard time with that, you know? And so I think that the gift that we can give people is some space and some like change of environment and change of activity to hopefully get them looking inward and thinking like, why am I, like, where am I headed in life?
Right.
What trajectory am I on? Who am I going there with? And is that where I want to go? Right.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sailing this direction and I'm going to hit Hawaii in 35 years, is that where I want to be? Which Hawaii would be good.
Yeah, you create space, man. It's like you're like an adventure therapist. It's like you create the space for things to happen possibly, but you don't force. And what you're focusing on is what's happening underneath, what's happening internally. And it seems like that's your goal, is if the client or customer goes through this adventure and they leave with an internal shift, that matters more to you than them, taking sweet jumps or or breaking speed records or whatever, right?
No, absolutely. And it's, if people just walk away from the trip and just had
A good time.
fun, just the
Yeah.
time of their life,
Yeah.
that is a huge win, because I think that there is great value in just having fun.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't need to be that they were crying around the campfire and they're
Mhm.
walking away with this revelation. It's
Yeah.
like, man, for so many, kind of middle-aged folks too, it's like, man, when's the last time you just had 4 days of straight up fun? A question I like to ask a lot of guys who are my age and stage of life is like, do you have any hobbies?
Yeah.
And the answer is almost often no.
No, right. Or do you have any friends? It's like,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and those go together,
Yeah.
so it's sad. So it's like these things that part of the wilderness philosophy is these things that gave us in our younger years, that gave us the energy to get us where we are, right? Friends, hobbies, wild, crazy trips where you didn't know the plan, like all this stuff. We use those things as fuel in the rocket to get to where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And then we stop doing those things,
Right.
thinking though we'll still have enough fuel to go the next season. So it's like, we ditched all our hobbies, ditched all the crazy road trips or whatever, ditched all the meaningful times with all our friends. And then we're thinking that we've got what it takes to go the next decade or two without that. And I just think that's why you see people completely depleted, right?
Yeah.
So again, it comes back to this idea, the rhythm of adventure, right? Is like, I think that you want to look at your calendar and see a couple things throughout the year that you're truly like excited about, like that feeling of a kid who can't wait for school to end because summer holidays are coming.
Yes.
And you're going on a
right.
trip. Like that's
That's
feeling.
so true.
Like,
yeah.
That like it's human. That's not just for kids. That's a human feeling, anticipation, right? Like how often have you heard someone be like, oh yeah, I got a trip coming up to Paris and I haven't even thought about it. Like I'll think about it on the plane. You'd be like, are you excited for your trip to Fiji?
Right.
And people are like, I don't know. I'm just like working right now. I'll think about it.
Right.
Like we don't even let ourselves get excited.
Yeah, man, that's really interesting. How has the pandemic affected you guys? Are people now more thirsty for connection and adventure, or are people, skittish?
Yeah, no, it has been, of course, at the beginning, it was scary for everybody.
Yeah.
And then for us, it was pretty cool. It felt like we were offering like a basic need for people. Like people were so starved, especially last year, for like connection, for outdoors, for doing anything. And we had this offering that was perfect. It was small groups, it was outdoor, it was domestic. And so the people who came on our trips, it was like they had, tasted real life for the first time. So it was pretty cool to be able to run a whole bunch of trips in the later half of last year. And certainly this year's been incredibly busy for us because I think people are finally prioritizing, outdoors, prioritizing experiences and kind of, seeing the value in that. So it's been really, it's been great for us.
I saw a photo on social and I think it was a warehouse and it was a fleet of dirt bikes. And there were like, I don't know, 20, 30, there were like 50, there were a lot. And I was thinking, holy shit, how fast you guys have grown. Because when I first went on your trip, it wasn't that big. It was more micro. And now, so how many dirt bikes were in that warehouse? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I think we had like 36 going out.
Yeah.
We had 3 different moto trips going out in one weekend.
Yeah. So now, talk about plate spinning. Now you have multiple adventures happening. How is that for you, and what's the overall vision? Like, how is this? You're just going to keep growing and growing till there's just like people everywhere on dirt bikes,
Yeah.
or yeah, where is this headed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so we've been doing the business for 9 years, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it took 8 years to get to our 100th trip, which was last September.
Wow,
And
that
this
is that a
September,
trip? Is that a trip a week?
not exactly. I mean, that
Okay,
was over 8 years. So
yeah,
it took us a while to
yeah.
get to our 100th trip last September. This September will be our 200th trip. So in
Wow,
1 year, we've done as many trips as we've done in 8 years. So
holy shit!
so
It's scaling.
it's been a wild ride. Yeah,
Yeah.
we are on top of the hockey stick curve here. But so what has been so yes, we're growing fast. The team's growing fast. The appetite is there from the customers. To me, the most important thing has been to work really hard on the company culture side of things, right? Because at
Mm,
the end of the day, like my people are the product, right?
right.
So I want people when they come on a trip to, yeah, we have great food and the dirt bikes are amazing or the side by sides are amazing, all that stuff. But really, when people give us feedback on the trips, they're never saying like, man, like I just love that Yamaha WR250.
Right.
It
Right.
blew
Right.
my mind. It's like, it's the people, it's my team, right? So I'm so proud when the feedback I get is about my crew. And
Mm,
that's not something you can microwave, you can't really, if you try to push your company culture too fast and try to scale that too fast, something's going to give. And of course, yeah, the company is different than it was back when you came on your first trip. But in the same way, I actually think that we are doing a better job of the
hmm.
same thing and we're doing it more often, right? Because we've just gotten really good at building a very special, meaningful experience for people that is, world class in every different way. So it's certainly not been easy, but that's really the commitment that I'm trying to make, which is some of that means restraint. It means like saying no to, just continuing that growth. Like
Right.
we grew a lot from 2020. We did 35 trips in 2020. We do 85 this year. It is not my goal to do 200 trips next
Yeah.
year. You
Right.
know what
Right.
I mean? I would rather have that growth be just incremental and not, I want to play the long game, right? So if I try to scale it way too fast,
Hmm.
I think then we start playing the short game.
Sure. Where do you see Wilderness Collective in 3 years? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think in 3 years it'll look very similar to what it looks like now, but it'll be
Hmm.
probably just offering more types of trips, different vehicles, different, activities, as well as just opening up more locations. So really we've been running almost everything out of just our Los Angeles location here. We do have like a
Hmm.
satellite warehouse in St. George, Utah that kind of helps with our logistics. But probably like the next big move would be like another headquarters somewhere else in the
Right.
country,
Right.
to kind of like serve a whole different region. Um, but yeah, like for me, like the growth comes from offering new routes, new types of
Hmm.
vehicles, um, and new demographic ideas too, right? Like we launched these dads and kiddos trips 2 years ago because I was like,
Yeah.
well, all my clients have little kids just like
Hmm.
me. It's like, how can I build a product for them? And that has been wildly successful. And now we've got dads and teens trips. We've got some family trips. Our co-ed trips are growing. Since we started launching the side-by-side trips, we've had a lot more interest in couples trips. And that stuff has been really fun. We do a lot of corporate, not really corporate stuff, but business trips, where people bring their leadership teams along and a facilitator. It's all kinds of stuff.
From the outside, someone like you who has been programmed to take risks and build the bus while you're driving it, and obviously I've seen you ride, so you're fearless, out in the on your bike. What are you scared of? So, what is Steve scared of? What is some of your fears, internal fears, just in life? Not like bears and shit, because I don't
No,
think you're.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. Um, I think my fear would be, so there's a proverb There's a proverb from the Bible that says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good one.
It's a great one.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that it's twofold. So though my work life and my personal life that I shared, they're kind of one, but I would be sad if in 10 years or 20 years, I just built this monster business out of this and we lost the heart and soul of it.
Oh,
We
I
lost
love
the
that. Yeah.
mission trip. We lost our why.
So you're saying that you got reach. It's become big and it's making tons of
Yes.
money. Everyone
Yeah.
knows about it, but the soul of it is gone. How would you know that the why and the soul is gone? How would you know that?
I think it would be the tone of feedback that I get from my customers,
Mm,
the passion from my crew. If I started to feel like they're just doing it because it's a job, and then I think trying to get honest with myself about like, why am I excited about this, right? Because like, do I need to go and do another Yosemite moto ride again that
yeah.
I've done like 45 times in my life? No. But would I love to do it next weekend with the 8 clients I've never met before who all are trying to wrestle with big things in their life? And I think this could help them, right? So the thing we do is the same. Ideally, it's the same every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, we've gotten very good at doing something that's the same. So that could be boring for a business leader, but the fun is the people are different every time.
Yeah.
A different story, different things happen, So that's some of the soul, And so then on the same side with my family, I wouldn't want to like grow the container of my family, the house, the household income, the like
Mm-hmm.
stuff, the trips, and have that become the focus, and not lose the soul of it. I had an interesting realization. So this big home swap trip that my family and I did, we were in Holland for 5 weeks and Copenhagen for 4 weeks,
Wow.
2 summers ago.
Yeah.
And my business ran, we did 11 trips, because it was smaller then. And so we were over there. And I had this realization there where I was like, wait, I just living abroad with my family for 9 weeks. My business is running back home. I love the guys that I work with. I really love what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, people work for 60 years to try
Yeah.
to get to the spot I'm at
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So if I get too greedy and try to scale too fast or get out over my skis, I could lose what I have now.
Mm.
So I want to make sure that that quality of life from all perspectives, economics is part of it for sure,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure that I'm not just growing for the sake of growth, because that is the story that the world tells you right now,
Right.
is like scale, 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 and sell. Right.
Right.
And for me, especially with the birth of my second son, it got me thinking like, hey, what if this is a business that my boys want to do? I want to build this thing so I could pass it on to them. And if they don't want to do it, that's fine. But in building the business in a way that it could be passed along to the next generation, I will inherently have built a very sound, stable company that also could be sold.
Right. Man, there's so much wisdom in what you just said. And, whether people can relate to your life or not, they can relate to this. And that is, I mean, you're talking about gratitude. You're talking about how we are programmed in the world to keep swimming bigger, prettier, faster, whatever,
Yeah.
and not realizing what we have, we could lose is right under our nose. And so you had this revelation while you were away, realizing that I'm already on the island.
Yeah.
Now it's about protecting the island.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great mindset, man. Yeah, I my second book was called "I Used to Be a Miserable Fuck," and I was always chasing shiny things, just growing up in Los Angeles. And one of my things that I've learned, which has become my motto, is never exchange your truth for membership, right? And whatever membership looks like for you. So membership can be selling a business, can be whatever. It can be a relationship, can be a pretty woman. I don't know, but
Yeah.
yeah, when you start to exchange your truth for membership, you start losing your soul.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I don't want to take up too much of your time. What is your motto as we end? Not, I mean, it could be the company motto, like, you know, wilderness makes you better. Obviously, is a great one. But what is Steve's motto?
So kind of my life goal is to leverage creativity to produce the most good I can in the world.
Ooh, leverage creativity to produce the most good in the world.
Yeah.
Describe that. What do you mean by that?
So I've always built creative brands,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always tried with each different business I've built to have them matter with a capital M and bring meaning into the world
Mm,
more and more and more. So I mean, if we had another hour, I could talk through the different businesses and how each time I was trying to like actually do something that I felt was actually helping people. And I'm not trying to like save the world. I'm really trying to like focus on my little corner of the world,
right.
which is my
Right.
team and my family, my team, and my customers, right? So to me, I think that creativity is like this weapon that we can wield for good or for selfish reasons or all kinds of things. So yeah, that's a big goal of mine for sure.
Can I just say, as someone who's experienced your products,
Yeah.
because right now we're talking about dirt bikes, adventure, and all that. But man, you are a master at detail. So, for example, the first trip, the backpack, the mug, the magazine. I don't. Are you still doing the magazine?
We
That seems
stopped
very expensive,
publishing after 7 issues. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And all of it was like collectors, like they were like, I could tell that you put a lot of effort and thought into the creative part, and you weren't just like handing out things for the sake of handing out things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I
Absolutely.
and I think from me as someone who's experienced this, that's kind of what you mean by leveraging creativity to send that ripple. And so it's very very memorable. I want to end with this. So I'm going on your Alaska trip, which I'm super excited about, and I want you to know. I want to pull the curtain back and show you what's been happening. So three of us, there's now four of us going on that trip, and we're friends. We started our own text thread
Yeah.
talking about, I mean, talking shit to each other, but also talking about the trip as a runway. And it reminded me of what you said, like when we were kids, and you're like, we're all going camping in the summer, and we start hyping it up,
Yeah.
and that's naturally happening behind the scenes. I don't know if you get to see that, but I'm just letting you know that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I think this trip, it's going to be life changing. And we're all going to get something different out of it. And so I want to thank you for creating these spaces. I see you as when I think about you, I don't just think about adventure and dirt bikes. I think about you in the sense that you're a catalyst,
Hmm.
and you're creating spaces for men to have opportunities to look inward. And to me, that is especially today, man. The soil is so rich right now for men to redefine themselves, and I
Yeah.
think you're contributing to that in a very creative and unobvious way. So
Yeah.
from the outside, people may be like, "Oh yeah, Steve, he runs the dirt bike trips." No, I mean that's what you do on the surface, but you're
Yeah.
doing things that are so much more meaningful and powerful
Yeah.
than that. And so yeah, as another man, and I'm older than you, but as another man who's gone through his journey and still on one, just want to thank you for what you do and being such a catalyst in this world.
Oh, thanks, man. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And I mean, same to you. Like, so much great work that you're doing, and kind of like you've been really bold in so many different, conversational spaces that people need. Like I was sharing about, people want to have the conversation, right? So you're like you're provoking the conversation with
Yeah.
the work that you're doing. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. All right. I will see you in the dirt.
All right, brother.
All right. Be
Well,
well.
see ya.
Bye.
Bye.